Hi everyone, this is Federico with Cuttle, and in today's live stream, I have a sort of more meta presentation for you. um, there was this request on Facebook that came with, a nice praise. This person says the software is amazing, and I would like to see a sort of breakdown with all we can do in Cuttle and what it means for people who are starting. And so that means I'm not going to do like a tutorial on doing something very specific. I think I'm going to try and do a general overview of Cuttle and the different things you can do. And the hope is that if you're already familiar with a bunch of the stuff we covered, then it will give you some ideas about other things you can do. And because this is live, and if you're watching. Please let me know what you like about Cuttle, or if you want me to expand on anything I'm kind of explaining at the moment. So yeah, thank you for that. Let's get started. So I think first I want to say kind of like just to cover the basics, like what is Cuttle, like what's the story, what it can do, and so just the very basics. Cuttle, it's a web-based and most people interact with Cuttle through two different things. There is one side, which is the templates. I have here my templates, the templates that are available in Cuttle, and then other people interact with the editor in Cuttle. So the editor is a vector editor. And so in a way, these two seem like two separate things, but they are like sort of versions of the same. Meaning, all the templates that you see here were made with the Cuttle editor, which means you can also make templates. So, some of the most frequently sort of used templates are things like these. There's this one called customizable, there's a category here called customizable text. And there is a very, very popular, although somewhat simple one called connected text. And so this kind of looks like a template. It works like a template in that you can simply, change any text here, like put my name, change the font and things like that. And then I can immediately download an SVG by clicking this button. And there are, of course, other templates with varying complexity. So I'm showing you here the official Cuttle templates, the ones that we kind of like tested and crafted so people can use. The laser cut boxes is another category, and just to show you a slightly more complex one, there is this one called box with dividers. And the way this one operates is that you can create kind of various boxes with dividers in the middle by choosing things like the width and the depth and the material thickness, of course, and then it lets you download a file that has all the parts that you need to assemble it. So this one is kind of like an example with more complexity. So these are like the sort of official Cuttle templates, and then of course users, someone like you could also make your own template and share it. And if we go to this explore page, there will be a bunch of templates that are shared by other users, including some members of the team, but also other people that make things. So here are a bunch of examples, and so this is just to show you that like there is a sort of shareability aspects to the things that you do with Cuttle. I don't know. I like this one, for example, where Hannah here was like trying to replicate different patterns, and she just kind of created a sort of simpler view of the way the patterns operate. So I think this is cool. This is kind of fun to see what other people do. And then there is the thing that we could sort of call the other side of Cuttle, which is the vector editor. So here, if I go back to my projects, you'll see that I have a bunch of projects that are my own, and I can create a new blank project. And so what we mean by a vector editor is like it's a software that lets you edit and create and edit vectors. And so things that it compares to are things like Illustrator or Inkscape or Affinity Designer. These are all kind of examples of vector editors that exist out there in the world. And Cuttle can basically replace a lot of these. But I think you should know that if you are familiar with, other vector editors, the concepts that are used are quite similar. So if you learn one or the other, then it's definitely easy to, it's not hard to learn the others. So I don't know, if you learn to do things in Inkscape, then you can do things in Cuttle. And I think it translates both ways. If you learn to do things in Cuttle, you can probably do things with Inkscape most likely. I think it's kind of worthwhile to see what are kind of like the key differences between these programs. I guess as a just to give you an idea of like, what is similar, what is different, and because that way you can like say, travel from one to the other. So here I have my, my Cuttle editor, but I have other programs open. I have Inkscape here. So this is Inkscape. And I want to say that Inkscape is a beloved program. It's like, it's open source, it's free, it's been around for 20 years. It does a lot of things, and it's wonderful. I use it for several things here and there. And so one thing to know about Inkscape, for example, is that it wants to do a lot of different things. And that's like a nice thing. I think the comparison I make sometimes is that I feel like a program like Inkscape feels like a workshop that is meant to do a lot of different things. Like if you have a workshop that does like woodworking and metalworking, and sewing, and like, I don't know, I call my kitchen the workshop as well. So what if you have the workshop that does everything? You can do cooking and sewing and stuff in there. That means you have quite the collection of tools, all sorts of different tools. You have like saws and scissors, for cutting. And so in a way, the interface of Inkscape feels a bit like that. It's like a big workshop with all the tools. And it allows you to do a lot of different things, which is really cool. But sometimes I think you want a workshop that is specialized. Like sometimes you separate your sewing, for example, from your woodworking, because you don't want the sewing to get dusty, and because for sewing you use the sewing machine and the scissors and the marking tools, and like you just want those tools. And so, so I was thinking that Inkscape has this interface where you have a bunch of tools here on the left side, and each tool kind of can do different things. I can make circles and things like these. And then you have like, quite the assortment of menus on top to do different things, which is rather cool. Like, for example, in Inkscape, you have all these extensions that do stuff like embroidery or like send things to plotters and things like that. So this is just to give you a sense of that. Another similar program would be something like Affinity Designer. And I think there is a clear similarity between, Inkscape and Affinity, where like you also have a big set of tools here on the left side that you can like use to do things. When you create shapes, you have these options to change the fill and the stroke over here, kind of really easily. And so there, of course, there are reasons to love these programs. I absolutely think so. But like when we compare it with Cuttle, like, so let's talk about some like real differences besides this kind of like tool metaphor. So with these programs, there is usually a sort of like document size. Inkscape, you can change it and make it fit your needs. Affinity also gives you this kind of document size, or in Illustrator, there are these things called, the name escapes me. Someone can tell me in the comments. Conversely, in Cuttle, let me switch to my Cuttle. Conversely, in Cuttle, what you have is a sort of unlimited canvas. You don't have to select your document size. And on this kind of tools idea, you can see that on the left-hand side of Cuttle, we don't have a ton of tools. And so artboards, thank you, Al. yeah, in Illustrator, these are called artboards. Um, the comparison I kind of like to make, where like Cuttle has less emphasis on tools you can use and more emphasis on like shapes. So on shapes that you can like put onto your workspace or your kind of unlimited canvas that we have here. So I don't necessarily have to select a document size when I start working. I think the comparison for me is like, yeah, Cuttle is a specialized for cutting operations for people that work with laser cutters like yourselves, or like cutting machines like Cricut or Silhouette, and so in that sense, it kind of reminds me more. I feel about Cuttle as a sort of specialized for like cutting stuff. So it kind of has just the tools you need for that. You don't have to go and like look in a kind of elaborate drawer of like which saw do I use. It's more like you have shapes that you kind of put onto your place. I like to compare it to like a Lego set in a way. Like instead of a rectangle tool, we have just a bunch of different rectangles that we can like say drag onto the canvas and start working for them. So in that sense, for me, it's more like Lego-like. Of course, there are like tools that are the same, similar, if not the same. And the ones that we have is the select tool. So this is like common across these programs. You generally have a select tool. You can see it right here, which, lets you move and rotate things. Then the other tool that is like fairly common would be the pen tool. So this one, for example, which lets you create like Bezier curves. That's like the the term of art for that. And you can, edit curves and things like that. These other programs are kind of well known for having that kind of tool. Sometimes loved, sometimes hated, I think, this Bezier curve tool. So yeah, that's about tools. That's about the canvas. Another like set of key differences is because Cuttle is optimized for cutting, there are a number of things that you don't have to do. So the most obvious example is text. So often when you do text in these other programs, which you can do, you select your text tool and then you start writing. But if you want to send it to the laser cutter, you want to convert these into paths. So this is like, there's an option here where you don't remember my Inkscape that well. You turn the object into a path, and now that it's a path, it has a bunch of nodes. So that means the laser is going to understand it. So that's an operation that you kind of easily internalize and can do. But when you're just doing cutting, you don't necessarily want to do that all the time. That becomes a source of errors in some ways. So with Cuttle, like text works more like you drag text, again, like a shape, and you can type anything here, and that's it. It's like it's ready to go. You don't have to like convert it to paths or anything like that. It's just like a cuttable thing immediately. Another comparison to that is that dash lines, like in Cuttle, when you create something with a dash, you can add this modifier. These dashes are immediately paths that the laser will understand. In other programs, you may have to apply the dashes and then also convert it into paths. I'm not necessarily trying to be like a car salesman here, but I'm trying to like tell you what the differences are. So another key difference is this, because Cuttle is web-based, we're interacting with it on a browser. And some people might dislike that because you definitely need an internet connection. Most things these days need internet connections, but that can be a disadvantage sometimes. But the advantages of that is of having an internet-based, browser-based things that you can work on multiple computers, not necessarily at the same time, but you can have your Cuttle account in multiple computers and your projects are there. Your projects auto-save. You don't necessarily have to click save every time. which it can be really nice. And sharing is easy because any project that you make can be shared as a simple URL. Like even something as simple as, or as silly as I just created, I can easily send it to someone by going to share and clicking unlisted. I guess now that I mentioned sharing, I could explain these two options. These three options. Private means that the project is not shared. Unlisted means that it's simply a link and it doesn't appear anywhere. But if I make it public, this is posted in your profile page. And so for each account, there is a profile page. So let me open my own. So my profile page could be at Cuttle at my username. And so here is a view of the projects I have made public. So there is just a selection of the projects I've made, and each one of these can be viewed by anyone if you click on it, anyone on the internet that is, and they can make changes and nicely enough anyone can open this project in the Cuttle Editor and see how it works. So there is this ability to see inside of things. So anyway, that was just to explain that when you make a project public, it should appear on your profile page. Let me see if that applied immediately. Yeah, so it's right there. It's not a lovely project, so I'm gonna kind of not make it into my profile page. I'm gonna make it unlisted. But once it's unlisted, I can copy this link and send it in an email to anyone. So this can have a lot of different uses depending on what your needs are. All right. So, and speaking of that, speaking of sharing, I wanna explain something specific about Cuttle that has a number of different uses. So, whenever you have a project, let's go back to having just a very simple project. There is this, I don't know if we could call this a project. There is this thing here on the left that is called the README. And this is, no other program has this kind of thing, the common Illustrator, Inkscape, and so what the README is, if you click on it, you get this just blank document. And the way, there are three distinct ways it can be used, and there are probably more. So I think the most basic way in which it can be used is that you can just simply write notes about the projects. Like I cut these out of plywood, and my settings, and the settings were 50, 100, something like that. So or you can add pictures that you use as a reference, or links or anything like that. So it's just a note-taking place. If you don't care about taking notes, you can totally ignore it. There is nothing there. You can add images here, so I can just grab any image from that I have on my computer. And this image is not part of the stuff that you're editing, it's simply in your notes. So it could be reference images. It could be, something I do occasionally as a sort of note-taking thing is that if I'm looking at a video on YouTube where I want to have some sort of reference about, what I'm doing there, I will literally just put the video here, because I can add a, I can show you an example of that maybe. So I will just embed the video right there and keep it as a reference for myself. So that's one distinct use of the README. Use notes and pictures for yourself. Another kind of distinct use is it's a way of sort of simplifying the view of your project. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you have kind of elaborate projects or complex projects where you want someone else just to get the basics. You don't want them to be concerned or worried that they're gonna change anything. So for example, if I had this project, and let's say I join it, not what I intended to do. And then I simply want, my partner or assistant or kid to be like, hey, I just want you to go and download this thing. Like, don't change the size, don't change anything about, download a few of those and cut them on the machine. I can simply embed that thing I created. So there is this button over here that we call it switch to simplified view. Because right now I can sort of still see the tools over here and like other things. But if I switch to that simplified view, this is all I see. This is all the person that you shared the project with can see. So they can say like, just download the SVG as they want it. And of course, there is the option there to open it in the Cuttle editor, as we've seen. So there is this kind of like transition between the editor and the project. And then, so yeah. So, and, to give you an example of like interesting uses of these like README, I don't know, is my own, I think I'm interesting, I guess. But I did this at some point. I was teaching a class, and then I wanted to create projects that were like starting projects for the students to do. And so I created just class activities. My Cuttle project would be like, I would give the students this link, and then they could see the description. I would have a little cover picture. Then I would have a description of the activity, a video that they could watch, and then, other instructions. And then, here on the README, I only have notes really. But I was asking the students to go look at the notes and then go open the project in the editor. And I just gave them like some sort of basic things to do to immediately interact with the project and then see the results of what they created. So example of like simple notes, shareable simple notes with a project that people can use. And then the final like kind of clear, the more related one is that sometimes you have projects where there is something that people can change and you just want them to change that one thing. So I can have that one, that single thing or set of things that I want people to change. So here in the simplified view, I say like, the only thing you're allowed to change in this project is the scale. So they can change the scale of that rectangle and create variations of it, and then they can download their SVG. And so that gets us closer to the template idea of like, sometimes you create a project that is a template that is shareable. So I think this allows, in a sort of business context, this allows people to like delegate tasks, for example. Like I've heard that some people in their business, one person is the designer, or even if you're the designer, one person can be the designer, and other people like are cutting the projects on the machine, and they don't want to see all the design stuff, and they just want to get the SVG and cut it. That would be like a use for it. So maybe I talked too much about this README situation, but I wanted to like spend a little time talking about cool things that Cuttle can do. So I'm gonna go back to the editor here. So let's do a quick cool things that Cuttle can do. So one cool one is the one that I mentioned before, which is this connected text. The big utility of that one is that the text gets all connected. It cuts as a single piece. You can choose any font. Of course, some fonts work better than others. Like the handwriting fonts work better. But like, you can always choose any font that you want. And the beauty of that one is that it also connects the eyes. So it kind of saves you time. As you can see, the dots on the eyes. So as you can see, this dot on the eye just kind of like got brought closer to the letter. So that's a cool one. The modifiers in Cuttle, we call them live or non-destructive, because once you apply them, you can still make changes. So what I mean by that is, in other programs like, for example, Inkscape, if I were to join two shapes, I have a shape, I have another shape, and I can select them, and I can union them. So at that point, that operation is one and done. And if I need to make any changes, I actually have to undo my things and then kind of go back. But like, undos can be a little cumbersome, I think. So the difference with Cuttle is that whenever you do basically the same operation, if you want two shapes joined, I can select them. I can apply this union or weld. And the operation, it's live in the sense that like I can go back and edit things. So I can say, for example, double click on my rectangle and change its size. And it's still kind of welded to the main shape. And I can change whatever, any other thing. Like I can change the scale or the position, the rotation, and the union operation still apply. So that's what we call a live modifier. And you can like stack modifiers one on top of the other. So for example, if I were to add this modifier called outline stroke. So I got the union, I got the outline in the shape, and I can change all the different things about it, and they remain live, meaning they're a living thing that can change as it exists. Another cool thing that is not super specific to Cuttle, but like it works well, is that in a Lego-like fashion, again, there is this kind of snapping behavior. So when you have like multiple shapes, you can grab them from, say, a corner, and then it will snap to the corner of other elements. It could be the corner, it could be the center. Snapping is a nice kind of useful, and you can enable it and disable it. Sometimes you want a more free form situation, you can do things like that. And disable snapping from here, disable or enable. Another feature that it's fun is that other programs will have rulers. So Cuttle also has rulers that you can drag from the left or from the top, and those become guides. So stuff will snap to those guides, or you can use them to like create your designs. But anything can be a guide. Like you can create as simple or as complex guides as you want. Let me delete those. So if I have like, say, a polygon, and I go over here, I can change the option that says show shapes as guides. And now this becomes a guide. A guide is something that if you send it to the machine, it won't cut or it won't be visible. It's only visible to you as you're using the workspace. And then things can snap to the points of that guide. And that's kind of fun. Like I think that can be very useful when you create like your own guides. And crazily enough, like guides can also have modifiers applied to them, which is trippy. Like you can, for example, change them, to have multiple sides, and then it remains a guide. The other thing I wanted to highlight that is kind of very cut based is the weld and score modifier. The way that one works is that sometimes you have two shapes or more, and then if I apply a simple union to it, then I got the shape that I wanted, but like I kind of lost the fact that this was a circle. So the weld and score does something kind of similar in that it will union the shapes, but it will retain the place where they overlap. So I'm gonna go to this weld and score over here. So you can see that like it retains this line of the rectangle, which I can use as a score, meaning when you cut with, it's kind of like a cut but with less power or a bit faster, so it doesn't cut all the way through. The most and depending on the order of the shapes, it will highlight different things. I think the most common use of that is that sometimes you're using text, like connected text, for example, and you want the text to have like other shape that is kind of connected to something like this. And so if you were to join these with that same weld, then the readability of your text kind of disappears, which is not nice. If text is what you wanted, but if you apply the weld and score, we get the behavior of, change the order here. You get the behavior of like the final shape is a single shape, but you still get the readability because you can score, it appears here in blue, you can score that. So anyway, the last thing I wanted to like mention that is like, for some of us might be like really far in the future, or it's just good to know. There is this kind of uncanny ability to see inside of Cuttle. that is kind of interesting to people that want to like create their own stuff, or just like create crazy modifications. And so what I mean by that is that like about anything that is in Cuttle, you can like, something as simple as a rectangle, I can see how it was built. It's a little bit like, I don't know if the old school people that did HTML websites, you can look at how a website is constructed. You just have to like, go to the view and developer view and view source. In a way, Cuttle has this thing where like anything you can like right click on it, and then one way is to show the contents. And so it will show you how the thing is constructed. So we can see that it is a path, and it is, a rectangle might not be as interesting to view, but like something like a star. If I view the contents, I can see that a star is like a pad that is made by a group of anchors with some rotational repeat, and I can even go and make changes to it that might be interesting or not. Maybe if I change this anchor anyway. So there are kind of wacky things you can do like that with Cuttle. And because, this is, sorry, here I just show you how it can be I can look inside to see how it's constructed, but I could even create variations of shapes. So if I have the star selected here, let me see. There is a way to go to the star, and here on the right-hand side, there is an option to create a variation. So if I create that variation, then I can actually come here and edit all the stuff from that star. Let me just, I can change like this. So I can kind of easily create a variation of, I don't know who needs a twisted star, but now I created my own sort of Lego shape in a way, like a weird twisted star. And then this uncanny ability to to see things applies to many other things. Like, we were talking about, say, the Boolean union operation. So if I click on it, there is this like little pencil on the side where you can see the code. And if I click on it, I get to modify that code, or I get to create variations of that. So that's like, I know teachers like to call it a high ceiling, meaning like as you grow, the program might grow with you. And naturally, if this doesn't apply to your needs, then it's fine. You can like use the tools that are there. All right. I hope that was like an interesting overview, or it gave you some ideas about things that can be done. Thank you for your questions and your comments. And I'll see you in the next one. All right. Bye.